Modern Horizons 2 spoiler season has proven one thing for sure. It's time to freaking dunk on Tron, man! Steven with Magic Meta Money. Right before turning on my camera, we got a new spoiler, which is where we're starting today. It is Break the Ice. Black sorcery. Destroy target land that is snow, or could produce colorless mana. Overload, 6 mana, destroy them all. This is very good news. Some people wanted Sinkhole for Modern. I was not on that train, though if they printed it, I would play it, admittedly. But this is Sinkhole specifically against Tron. And the most important thing about this is the fact that when you are on the draw, you still can do this before they assemble Tron. That's the key. That's why 3 mana land destruction in Modern isn't as powerful as you might think, is because when you are on the draw against Tron, it's too late. They've already carned you. That's the problem. But now, this is a good sideboard card for Tron. Now, admittedly, it is less flexible than like Reign of Tears or Fulminator Mage, because sometimes you bring those cards in kind of random matchups, like against Control or something, or just when you really just need like your 60th or 59th cards. And you're not going to be doing this with Break the Ice, obviously. This is very specific against snow decks, sure, but mostly Tron, obviously. That's the big reason for this card. So it is a little bit more narrow. And the other big thing about this is that gets me a little bit less excited is Titan decks. This is useless against Titan decks, and that's a big problem. Primeval Titan decks are already really powerful, so I'm a little bit less, jumping for joy, dancing, happy as a dog, digging sand at a beach. I'm a little bit less excited about this than I normally would be, because it doesn't help you against the Titan matchup, but nonetheless, this is a strong card, and it's definitely going to see play in sideboard, depending on your meta game. Sudden Edict, proving another powerful movable spell for black. 1 black, 1 generic, instant, split second, target player sacrifices a creature. Edict effects admittedly aren't the most powerful, nor do they see the most play in Modern, but if you're seeing someone who's trying to, stick a threat and then protect that one threat, this is really good against it. Shardless Agent is in Modern. 3 mana Grey Ogre Cascade. So it's a 1 green, 1 generic, 1 blue, 2/2 with Cascade. This is artifact creature. This is very, very powerful. This is going to allow some crazy things, especially the fact that you can crank this thing out on turn 2. Wow. Like, imagine just going turn 2, Shardless Agent into Tarmogoyf. You have a huge battlefield. And then assuming that you did that off of Ignoble Hierarch, you get an Exalted trigger if you're only attacking with 1 creature. I mean, this is going to be big. And yes, the most powerful thing you can do with this is like somehow put Ancestral Visions back on top of your library with, say, Jace Brainstorm, but then cast this, and then, yeah, you're getting to be able to cast Ancestral Visions for free. That's obviously very, very powerful. I'm not talking about just pie in the sky, moonshot dreams. I'm just saying, hey, this is a powerful card. To get 3 mana, 2/2 body is there. It's obviously not good, but it's there. It's something that exists, and it's an artifact creature, which is going to pump your Tarmogoyfs, and it's just going to get you another spell that's either 1 or 2 mana. This is definitely going to see play. People are excited about this card. Prices of it have been shooting up immediately as soon as it was spoiled a couple days ago. Yep, we're going to see this one. Chainer Nightmare Adept. 2 black, red, legendary creature, human minion, 3/2. Discard a card. You may cast a creature spell from your graveyard this turn. Activate only once each turn. Whenever a non-token creature enters the battlefield under your control, if you didn't cast it from your hand, it gains haste until end of turn. Typically when I see these types of cards, I think, wow, a lot of value, not going to see any play. I mean, it dies to Lightning Bolt, it's 4 mana, it doesn't do anything when it enters the battlefield, it's just too risky of a card to really put in your deck. I do think this allows some crazy like graveyard-specific synergies and like actually a build around, like put this in a graveyard-style deck with discard outlet, plus the value you get from casting from your graveyard, giving them haste. But aside from that, I actually want to focus this in more of a Jund mid-range shell, surprise, surprise. I see this as a really good mirror breaker to bring in from your sideboard, because by the time you cast this thing, resources are spent and people are top decking. So what that means is there's a really greater chance that it survives until your next turn, in which case you can just take whatever you top deck and then just, if it's like top decking a land, it's just brutal in those situations, right? It turns into a top deck war, and now all your top decks are threats. Not only threats with haste. I don't know if this is actually going to cut it, and maybe this is not going to be a good mirror breaker because it is 4 mana that still does nothing when it enters the battlefield and can die. But in theory, when you're in top deck mode, this seems like a really strong top deck, but it still has to wait a full another turn. But then you top deck that land, sweet, turn that thing into a Tarmogoyf with haste. And of course, the more obvious part of this card that automatically shines is just that second line of text giving your creatures haste even if you didn't have to discard a card. So that way if you unearth something or if you cast Kroxa, the fact that your Kroxa is going to enter the battlefield, get that trigger, attack, get the attack trigger, that is extremely powerful. The fact that this is on such a weak body I think is really good because it makes it a very interesting card. It's not just like an automatic, wow, graveyards are just here to play and it's insane, you get all this value. You have to work for this thing. But I think it's worth testing and working around specifically in that mirror breaker, mid-range mirror, top decking war. Dauthi Voidwalker, black 3/2 shadow, essentially unblockable. If a card would be put into an opponent's graveyard from anywhere, exile it instead with a void counter on it. Tap, sacrifice Voidwalker, choose an exiled card an opponent owns with a void counter on it. You may play it this turn without paying its mana cost. Okay, this looks like a good card. So first of all, it's only 2 mana. Yeah, it dies to bolt, but only being 2 mana versus like 3 or 4 means you can take that risk potentially. And this has some really powerful effects on it. So first of all, 3 power unblockable for 2 mana, great. This is just straight up graveyard hate. It's just got that Anathenza line of text saying, hey, nothing's going into your graveyard from now on while this thing's on the battlefield. But then the fact that later you can cash in this thing for any card without paying its mana cost is crazy. Like, this is nutso, and you can't just do it at sorcery speed. You can do it whenever. So, you know, an opponent eventually, somehow, for one reason or another, there's a cryptic command in their graveyard, or now exiled with a void counter on it. Dude, awesome. Like, you can now get a cryptic command for 0 mana. Yeah, you have to sack your creature, but this is really strong. I think this card is here to play. This is a really interesting card. Like, the fact that it's just graveyard hate, but then can be cashed in later to upgrade it to something more powerful or a spell or anything, not just creatures. This is really, really flexible and has a lot going on for it. Shatter Spitter, love this thing. 2 and a green. Artifact, at the beginning of your upkeep, you may sacrifice a token. If you do, put an acorn counter on Shatter Spitter. Squirrels you control get +1/+1 for each acorn counter on Shatter Spitter. Green, tap, create a 1/1 squirrel creature token. What a cute, fun card. This thing looks like super fun and modern. Like when I go to my MH2 pre-release, I just want this card to be played. Whether I'm playing it or my opponent's playing it, it's just going to be a fun card. Aethersworn Sphinx, 7 white-blue, 4/4, affinity for artifacts, flying cascade. Oh my. This is the type of thing where you're going to see affinity for artifacts is huge. This thing is 9 CMC, but with affinity for artifacts, you're never going to be casting it for 9 mana, obviously. This is the type of card where I think they did a lot of testing around it. I think they had to do a lot of testing to say, hey, how often can people be tapping this thing for like 2 or 3 mana? Because if you're casting this thing for 2 or 3 mana, you're getting a 4/4 flying. You're getting an air elemental with cascade. Plus the cascade technically can hit like 8 mana spells. I mean, I don't know why those being whatever, but like this thing looks crazy. This thing looks bonkers. This thing looks like it's going into Urza decks, and it's going to be people are going to be brewing around it. Not the type of card I brew around, but there's going to be a lot of brewing with this card. It looks really powerful. Sword of Sinew and Steel, 3 mana artifact equipment. It gets +2/+2 and pro black, pro red. When it deals combat damage to a player, destroy up to 1 target planeswalker and up to 1 target artifact. Great. This is exactly what we would expect it to do with the shatter effect. I'm surprised that it can destroy a planeswalker for its like more black style of value you get of a trigger, but this looks strong. You can see it in sideboards on occasion and constructed, but as far as just being a powerful card for FNM and it's just a cool sword that does interesting things, looks great. Fury, 3 red, 3/3 double strike. When it enters the battlefield, it deals 4 damage divided as you choose among any number of target creatures and or planeswalkers. Evoke, exile a red card from your hand. This one's been fun to evaluate so far. So the floor on this thing, this is what I like to think of. What is the floor? This thing's in your deck. 5 mana, 3/3 double strike, enters the battlefield, Flame Tongue Kavu, destroy something. Maybe even 2 things. That seems pretty strong. Like the body is weak. I think it's important this thing dies to bolt because it enters the battlefield on such a powerful trigger. If you kill 2 things with this thing, that's really powerful. Which also is what makes it appealing for doing it for its pitch cost, is the fact that you can kill 2 creatures with this bad boy you're not down a card, and it was 0 mana. So you're up on mana and not down a card. This looks really strong. Yeah, I think this is powerful. Like, creature decks, it's gonna be tough, man. This thing is gonna be so strong. Like, I'm so excited for Ignoble Hierarch, but imagine like casting Noble Hierarch into Bob, and then this thing enters the battlefield and just kills both your creatures. and they didn't pay any mana. Like that, that's rough, man. That's rough. It doesn't have flash, notably, which is probably a good thing, because the fact that this one does not necessarily 2-for-1 yourself, strong card. I think this will see play. I think the whole cycle is really strong. Last card of the day, and it is a big boy. Murktide Regent, 5 blue, dragon, 3/3. That's kind of small for a dragon. Let's read on. Delve, okay, so that makes sense why it costs so much mana. You can delve it into play. Flying, yeah, we expect that. Murktide Regent enters the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter on it for each instant and sorcery card exiled with it. What? Whenever an instant or sorcery card leaves your graveyard, put a +1/+1 counter on Murktide Regent. Well, I think this might see some play. That's my hot take. You can cast this thing as a 6/6 for 2 mana on turn 2. That's nutso, right? Turn 1, fetch land into the graveyard, Thought Scour, mill over 2 spells. Obviously that's getting lucky. Turn 2, fetch land. Now you got 5 cards in your graveyard. You play this thing as a 2/2 for 2 mana, and it's a 6/6 because you have 3 instants or sorceries in your graveyard. Absolutely bonkers. This thing is definitely going to see some play. It's really strong. You're going to see this thing come into play. Yeah, obviously it can come into play in turn 2. You're going to see this thing come into play, and it's going to be, you know, a 5/5, a 6/6, even a 7/7. Like, this thing is nuts. So obviously, yeah, max it could be an 8/8. But once you get to a 7/7, I mean, this thing is, it's a 3-turn clock no matter what. Even as a 6/6, it's pretty much a 3-turn clock, and then you can maybe leave some instant sorceries in your graveyard if you need to for other reasons. This is definitely going to see strong play. Delve is a crazy mechanic, and it's interesting that one of the biggest problems with Delve is how it interacts with fetch lands, how you just get free cards in your graveyard without having to cast spells or like do things to progress the game state. But this one incentivizes you to have instant sorceries in your graveyard, so it's a little more play to it than just classic Delve, but you are certainly rewarded for doing that. This thing is crazy. That's it for today. More videos coming later this week. Go ahead and subscribe. That way these videos pop up in your feed as they come up, as we are going to be doing so much with Modern Horizons 2, not just with preview season, but once that's done, we're going to be talking about different deck lists and brews. It's going to be a lot of fun. We'll see you next time.